Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project. Thank you all very much for joining. We are very appreciative of having everyone who has joined and is able to participate this evening. My name is Caitlin Gillerin, and I am a contractor for the BLM. I will be facilitating the meeting tonight. Tonight's scoping meeting will include an introduction by the acting field manager for the Las Vegas field office, Katrina Williams, followed by introductions of the participants from the BLM Southern Nevada District and Panorama Environmental Incorporated, the third-party contractor facilitating tonight's session. After introductions, Jessica Heaton, the BLM project manager, will present on the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project and provide a short overview of the BLM process. Following the presentations, there will be a question and answer session facilitated by Panorama Environmental, with responses from the BLM, and then we'll open up the forum for public comment. Then we will close out for the evening. This meeting will be recorded and the video will be posted to the project information webpage posted in the chat. Now we will turn it over to Katrina Williams, acting field manager for the Las Vegas field office, for an introduction and an overview of our presenters and other participants for this evening's scoping meeting.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Golden Currant Solar Project. My name is Katrina Williams, and I'm the acting field manager for the BLM Las Vegas field office, and I wanted to thank you all for joining us tonight. So the Golden Currant Solar Project is located in Pahrump Valley, south of State Route 160 and adjacent to the Clark-Nye County line. The BLM completed the variance review for the Golden Currant Solar Project in January of this year and has initiated the environmental planning required by the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA. Input provided during the variance review will be carried forward into this NEPA process for the Golden Currant Solar Project. These virtual scoping meetings, along with the scoping period that will be open until June 9th, 2023, are part of the first steps of the NEPA process. During scoping, BLM asked for comments and input on the proposed project to better understand the potential issues and concerns, as well as develop a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed action. The presentation tonight is intended to inform all of you of the project details, such as type of solar facility, location, size, timeline, and issues already identified through the variance review. We will explain the NEPA process and what kind of information will be most helpful during the scoping period. Before we begin, I wanted to make sure everyone knows that we're still in the early stages of the NEPA process, so we may not have all the answers to your in-depth or specific questions, but we will work hard to provide answers to your questions later in the meeting. But please know that even hearing your questions will help us better understand what needs to be analyzed. So before we begin with the presentation, I would like to introduce you to the speakers today. So Jessica Heaton is the BLM project manager for the Golden Currant Solar Project, and she will be providing an overview presentation on the project as well as the NEPA process. And then Jessica is also joined by other BLM staff members who are shown on the screen and are working behind the scenes to help answer your questions. And they'll answer the questions later in the meeting. And I just would like to turn it over to Caitlin to go over tonight's meeting format. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Tonight's forum will provide opportunities for questions and public comment. There will be a question and answer session where written questions can be submitted. There will also be an opportunity for verbal public comment toward the end of the scoping meeting. We'll have more information on these two opportunities later on. Comments and questions can be submitted via the Participate Now button on ePlanning, email to the email address on the screen, or via mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office. We will also provide this information in the chat for this forum. As mentioned on this coming slide, before including your address, phone number, email address, or other personal identifying information in your comment, you should be aware that your entire comment, including your personal identifying information, may be publicly available at any time. While you can ask that your personal identifying information be withheld from public review, the BLM cannot guarantee that they will be able to do so. Anonymity is not allowed for submissions from organizations or businesses and from individuals identifying themselves as representatives or officials of organizations or businesses. Now Jessica will present an overview of the Golden Currant Solar Project, as well as the BLM completed variance process and the ongoing environmental compliance process.
Thank you, Caitlin. Noble Solar LLC has submitted a right-of-way application for the Golden Currant Solar Project. The right-of-way request is to utilize public land in Clark County for the construction, operation, and eventual decommissioning of a proposed solar facility and interconnection to the regional transmission system. The proposed project is a 400 megawatt photovoltaic solar facility with battery storage located on approximately 4,456 acres of BLM administered lands, 5 miles southeast of the town of Pahrump and 26 miles west of Las Vegas. The Golden Currant Solar Project is located in a variance area and was subject to the variance process defined in the 2012 Western Solar Plan. In January 2023, the BLM completed the variance process and determined it was appropriate to continue processing the application and initiate NEPA review for the project. The map on the screen shows the proposed solar facility in red near the Nevada-California border. The proposed generation tie line in green runs northeast of the project, parallel with Tocopa Road, to the existing Trout Canyon substation shown as the black box on the top right of the map. The Trout Canyon substation was approved with the Yellow Pine project, and construction on the substation was completed in 2022. This map shows the location of the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project in relation to local roads and streets within the Pahrump area, including the Old Spanish Trail Road, Front Sight Road, Tocopa Springs Road, Old Route 16, State Highway 160, and Cathedral Canyon. As described earlier, Noble Solar is applying for a right-of-way to construct, own, operate, and decommission the proposed project consisting of up to 400 megawatts alternating current solar photovoltaic power generating facility and 400 megawatt battery energy storage system. The project will be located on approximately 4,456 acres of Bureau of Land Management administered land. The right-of-way application contains a larger area than required for the solar field to allow for adjustments in the facility layout to minimize environmental impacts based on the National Environmental Policy Act, also referred to as NEPA analysis. The right-of-way is being proposed to accommodate temporary and permanent ground disturbances for the construction of the 400 megawatt AC photovoltaic solar facility and BESS, with access roads, solar field, and gen-tie line extending from the project substation to the Trout Canyon 230 kV substation. On the screen, you will see a preliminary site layout for the proposed solar project. The preliminary site layout reflects plan avoidances of some drainage and topographical features within the site boundary. Note, as a result of resource information gained from studies and reports, the project sponsor has indicated that an updated plan of development and site layout will be submitted soon. The project sponsor has indicated that the updated plan of development will include a site layout with additional avoidance areas to minimize potential impacts to resources. Following submittal and BLM review, the BLM will post the updated plan of development to the project webpage. The BLM is also considering a resource management plan amendment to modify 2 utility corridors that intersect the Golden Currant Solar Project boundary. This resource management plan amendment would be considered during the planning process. The map on the slide shows the project boundary in red and the 2 utility corridors that intersect the project area. These utility corridors include a west-wide energy corridor designated under Section 368 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, shown in yellow, and the utility corridor designated by the 1998 Las Vegas Resource Management Plan, shown in orange. The flow chart on the screen shows the application evaluation process, which begins with the submittal of a solar project application. The application is then prioritized based on the regulations and involves interdisciplinary team review. This helps the BLM prioritize and process the solar application workload more efficiently. After prioritization, and based on the priority determined, the BLM considers adding the application to the plan of work and initiating the solar application evaluation process. This includes the variance process, which we will discuss in more detail later. The application evaluation and the variance process involves public information forums and agency coordination. When the evaluation is complete, the BLM determines whether to continue to process the application. In January of 2023, BLM determined to continue processing the Golden Currant Solar application, initiate the NEPA process, including analysis and public involvement. These public scoping meetings for the Golden Currant Solar Project are part of the NEPA process. The variance process is part of the application evaluation process described in the BLM right-of-way regulations. The variance process focuses on collection and evaluation of resource data with input from the public, tribes, and federal, state, and local governments. This input and evaluation of data helped BLM to assess the appropriateness of the solar proposal. In July 2022, the BLM hosted 2 virtual public information forums and an agency meeting with federal, state, local, and tribal governments to gather public input. The information gathered during the meeting and the input period were reviewed and summarized for the project. Issues identified from the input period will be carried forward into the NEPA process for the project. Additionally, the BLM sent letters to Native American tribes to assess interest on projects and invite tribes to initiate formal government-to-government consultation. Tribal consultation with 15 tribes is ongoing. Additional information on the variance process for the Golden Currant Solar Project can be found at the project webpage. The flowchart on the screen shows the NEPA process for the Golden Currant Solar Project. The NEPA process begins with the publication of a notice of intent announcing the intention of the BLM to complete an environmental impact statement, and in the case of this project, a resource management plan amendment. The notice of intent for the project was published on April 25th, 2023, which initiates the public scoping period. The scoping period will end June 9, 2023. The scoping meeting tonight is included in the step in the NEPA process. After scoping, the BLM reviews the comments provided, generates issues to analyze, identifies any suggested alternatives, and develops the draft environmental impact statement and draft resource management plan amendment. The draft impact statement for the project and resource management plan amendment are published for a 90-day public review period, initiated by the publication of a notice of availability. Comments submitted during the public review period are reviewed, and substantive comments are responded to in the final EIS and proposed resource management plan amendment. The final EIS and proposed resource management plan amendment are made available for 30 days with publication of a notice of availability. During the availability period, there will be a concurrent 30-day protest period and Nevada Governor's consistency review of the final EIS and proposed resource management plan. If protests are received, they are responded to And if no additional changes to the documents are necessary, then BLM would issue a record of decision for the environmental impact statement and approval of the resource management plan amendment, which, if the project is approved, BLM would proceed with issuance of a right-of-way grant. Here listed on the slide are the preliminary resource concerns identified during the variance process. Recreation, including off-highway vehicle use and access to public lands, visual resources, Old Spanish National Historic Trail, cultural and tribal resources, wildlife and vegetation, social economics, property values, public health and safety, and water resources. Here is a table of the status of technical studies and reports. As appropriate, some reports, such as the Desert Tortoise Survey Report, may be made available on the project website once BLM determines they are complete. Next, we will discuss the identified preliminary resources concerns in more details. For the wildlife and vegetation concerns, identified issues include special status wildlife, including desert tortoise, wildlife habitat, sensitive vegetation, desert pavement, and soils. We'll be consulting with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for Section 7 Endangered Species Act consultation, and the Nevada Department of Wildlife also for consultation. Technical studies required will include the desert tortoise and botanical surveys and reports. For the visual resources and recreations, identified issues included protection of visual resources in the project area and views from surrounding communities, off-highway vehicle use and loss of public lands in the area, non-motorized recreation and camping, and access to public lands for recreation and business purposes. Technical studies expected include the Visual Resource Technical Report with simulations and the off-highway vehicle trail use data. Issues identified for National Historical Trails, cultural and historical resources included the Old Spanish National Historic Trail, the Grave of Cujo, and Cathedral Canyon, and of course, impacts to spiritual lands. Consultation will include the State Historic Preservation Office for consultation under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, and tribal consultation is ongoing. Technical reports expected will be a cultural resource report and the BLM Manual 6280 Inventory and Impacts Analysis for the Old Spanish National Historic Trail. Identified issues for social, economic, and property values include loss of property value and impacts to local economics and job creation. Technical reports expected include the economic modeling and social economic report. For public health and safety, issues identified include dust, pollution, and fine particulate matter, climate change issues, and impacts to local economics and job creations. Technical reports expected include the air quality technical report. And for issues identified for water resources, quantity and source of water for construction, effect on existing water resources and supply, stormwater and sedimentation. We plan to consult with Clark County Permitting as well as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering for the Section 404 of Clean Water Act permit. Technical reports expected include the water supply use report and drainage study. The Golden Currant Solar Project, encircled in a red outline, is the project we are discussing tonight. The Copper Ray Solar Project in gray and the Rough Hat Clark County Solar Project in bright blue have already held their individual NEPA scoping meetings. The La Brea Solar Project, shown in fuchsia, and the Mosey Solar Project, shown in lavender, were prioritized but not been scheduled for initiation of application evaluation yet. The Rough Hat Nye County Solar Project in green is currently paused. Several other cumulative solar projects are proposed in the California side of the valley, including Bonanza Peak Solar, proposed on private lands with a generation tie line proposed on BLM administered lands in Nevada, and the proposed Sunbake and Borderline Solar Project applications. Also on the screen, you'll see the location of the approved Yellow Pine Solar Project shown in yellow, which was authorized with the record of decision in the fall of 2020 and is currently under construction. After the public scoping meetings have concluded, we will continue to gather comments on the project until June 9, 2023. The information we gather will be considered in the draft environmental impact statement, which is anticipated in the winter of 2023. More information can be found on the project webpage. Helpful input and information from you would include how to refine the solar project to avoid or reduce impacts to natural resources, plants, wildlife, soils, landscape views, and recreation, OVH trails, horseback riding, and target shooting. We would also appreciate input on reasonable alternatives to the solar project as currently proposed and alignments for the utility corridors and specific issues and concerns for the BLM to evaluate in detail. Comments identified other past, present, or foreseeable future human activities in the area that are also causing or will cause impacts to natural resources, landscape views, or recreation would also be helpful. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Caitlin, who will begin the question and answer session.
Thank you, Jessica. That concludes the presentation. We will now have a question and answer section on the Golden Currant Solar Project. Questions can be submitted using the question and answer box by following the instructions on this slide. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A feature to submit questions. Please understand that some questions will be answered live during this question and answer session, while some may be answered in writing in the Q&A feature. Anyone can see all the questions answered in the chat by clicking on the Show All button. We understand some questions have come in, and we will be organizing those, and I will be facilitating asking the questions as the project manager, Jessica Heaton, will answer them. Thank you for your patience as we continue to organize some questions. Great. First question. A letter published in the March 15th issue of the Pahrump Valley Times alleged that Golden Currant would require 1,000 acre-feet of water during its first year in construction and 200 acre-feet for maintenance every year thereafter. Is this true or incorrect? And if true, were such figures obtained from documents filed by the developer with the BLM?
Thank you for the question. As expressed in the proponent's submitted plan of development, the project anticipates needing up to 1,000 acre-feet of water for construction-related activities, including dust control, and up to 28 acre-feet per year for operations and maintenance. Construction is expected to take up to 12 months and would include the major phases of mobilization, construction grading and site preparation, installation of drainage and erosion controls, PV panel and tracker assembly, and solar field construction. The proponent has indicated that water would be purchased from a commercial source or existing water rights owner. It would then be trucked or piped to the project site where it would be stored in an on-site water storage tank. The applicant would engage best practices for the project and is committed to complying with all regulations, coordinating with the Nevada State Engineer, and implementing other measures to ensure groundwater basin integrity.
Chose the name Golden Currant and why? To what is it a reference?
Thank you. The proponent is responsible for naming the project. Golden currant is a plant species, but it does not grow at these low elevations.
Another question. The Wolfenstein Estate in Pahrump sold water rights for Yellow Pine Solar. Does Noble Solar have any options for water outside the Pahrump Valley, which is overallocated and could see residential wells dry up in the coming years?
Thank you. The proponent is currently working on identifying potential sources of water that could be utilized for the project development. There is not specific information available on the water source at this time.
Yellow Pine Solar is using 300,000 gallons of water per day, which they are filling up at Wolfenstein's well off of Crazy Horse Road. How many gallons of water per day would Golden Currant use during construction?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the proponent submitted their plan of development and they anticipated needing up to 1,000 acre-feet of water for the construction activities. Again, that included dust control, and then 28 acre-feet per year for the operation and maintenance.
How many Mojave yucca does the BLM estimate are present on the site?
Thank you. Belt and transects within the project area were done during the 2022 botanical surveys. And based on the data, an estimated 13,085 cacti and yucca within the project area. This includes estimates of the number of cacti and yucca within the Gentai area. Once the botanical report is accepted and finalized by BLM, the botanical report will be made available on the e-planning webpage for review.
While we are waiting for the questions to be organized, I just want to remind everyone that the scoping period is through June 9th, 2023. So there are several more opportunities for you to provide comments via email or mail or on e-planning. Thank you. Another question has come in. Does the developer Noble Solar also develop oil and gas projects?
Thank you for the question. The BLM does not have information about what, if any, other industries that Noble Solar has projects in.
How many creosote, the root systems of which can be 10,000 years old, does BLM estimate are present on the site?
Thank you. Baseline vegetation surveys were conducted using BLM's assessment, inventory, and monitoring method. Covering percentages are available for species within these plots, which will be available for public review once it is finalized. But BLM does not currently have an estimate on how many creosotes are present within the proposed site boundaries.
Another question. What Native American tribes have been or are being consulted, and by what means?
The BLM has initiated engagement with 15 Indian tribal nation governments, including sending letters to invite the tribes to initiate formal government-to-government consultation. Tribal consultation for the projects is ongoing. A detailed list of those tribes that the BLM has initiated engagement with can be found in the notice of intent published in the Federal Registry, which is also available at the project website. In addition to government consultation responsibilities, the BLM has invited those 15 Indian tribal nations to be cooperating agencies on the Golden Currant Solar Project. The specific protocols for how consultation proceeds and what that consultation looks like will be dependent on the BLM's relationship with each tribe. Generally, this consultation consists of coordination between the BLM's authorized officer and the individual tribal governments to identify specific tribal concerns and work with the necessary individuals to address those concerns. These efforts are part of an ongoing relationship between the BLM and each tribal government.
Thank you again, everybody, for your patience as we're waiting for the questions to be organized. The dust at Yellow Pine Solar is not being controlled, even though they spray 300,000 gallons of Pahrumps water each day. You can see a dust cloud from South Pahrump. Will the Golden Currant Solar Project create more fine dust since 40% of the site is badlands?
Thank you. As we are still in the early stages of the environmental review process, the BLM is still gathering information on issues to analyze and impacts to fugitive dust from proposed projects are unknown at this time. Based on input received during the Golden Currant Solar Project variance process, the BLM will be considering the effects of the project on air quality. The applicant is preparing an air quality modeling report for the project. Following BLM review and approval, information from this report would be utilized to analyze potential effects from the proposed action, and identified alternatives on air quality within the region. Additionally, as part of the environmental review process, design features or mitigation measures would be identified to minimize or reduce potential effects to air quality, including dust control measures. The air quality report and analysis would be available for review and comment during the draft environmental impact statement public review period.
Where is the 1,000 acre feet of water going to come from?
Thank you. The proponent is still identifying potential sources for procurement of water for the project.
Will native vegetation, including biological soil crusts, be preserved, or will the project area just be graded and left as bare ground?
Thank you. The plan of development proposes to disc enroll the site during the NEPA process. The BLM would identify reasonable alternatives to the proposed action, including different site preparation techniques, utilizing comments gathered during scoping and BLM interdisciplinary reviews. This could include an alternative that retains some percentage of vegetation, which would also help to protect soils, including biological soil crust.
As a reminder, while we wait, you are also able to comment using the Participate Now button on e-planning, via email or mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office through the end of the scoping period, which is June 9th, 2023. Another question, how many people are attending this meeting?
Currently, there are 11 attendees for this meeting.
How does the BLM conduct air quality surveys? What is the process and over what time period do they assess?
Thank you. The BLM is conducting air quality modeling to assist in analysis of potential impacts to air quality impacts from the project. The air quality modeling report analysis will be included in the draft environmental impact statement when it is released for public review and comment.
At what point in the approval process does the applicant have to provide a detailed reclamation plan?
Thank you. Typically, BLM provides the draft reclamation plan with the draft EIS for the project. The reclamation plan is finalized after the record of decision is signed to ensure it accounts for acreage and construction methodology in the selected alternative.
How many gallons of water is 1,000 acre feet?
326 million gallons. Approximately.
What commercial sources are available for water?
The project sponsor is still working to identify potential sources for procurement of water for the project.
Thank you again, everyone, for your patience as we're organizing questions. Which Indian nations have responded to the BLM so far?
As I mentioned before, the BLM has initiated engagement with 15 Indian tribal nation governments, including sending the letters to invite to tribal and initiate formal government to government consultation. Tribal consultations with government is ongoing. A detailed list of those tribes that BLM has initiated engagement with can be found in the notice of intent published on the Federal Registry.
Don't you, the BLM, have some idea of the potential water sources?
At this time, the BLM does not have information about potential water sources. It is still very early in the environmental review process. The proponent is working to identify potential water sources for the project.
Which elements in the soil are tested for? Southern Nevada has naturally occurring asbestos in some areas and likely other toxic substances which become airborne with disturbance.
There has been no soil testing done for the Golden Currant project. As part of the environmental review process, design features and mitigation measures could be identified to include health and safety programs to address reducing exposure to dust in areas endemic to the valley fever fungus, or if there are areas known to have naturally occurring asbestos.
Thanks again, everyone, for your patience. As we're waiting for the questions to be organized, just a reminder that the scoping period is through June 9th, 2023. So you may continue to submit comments through any of the methods we've discussed. such as e-planning, email, or mail. What health effects might fugitive dust have on the 45,000 residents of Pahrump? What effect might it have on visitors to the front site shooting range?
Thank you. As we are still in the early stages of the environmental review process, the BLM is still gathering information on issues and alternatives to analyze, and impacts to fugitive dust from the proposed project are unknown at this time. Again, based on input received during the Golden Currant Solar Project variance process, the BLM will be considering the effects of the project on air quality through the analysis.
Will lessons learned from the environmental problems at Yellow Pine be incorporated into the decision?
The BLM has incorporated lessons learned from construction outcomes to date at the Yellow Pine Solar Project into vegetation management best practices BLM is working to develop.
Thank you again, everyone, for your patience as we're continuing to organize questions. Who will monitor air quality during and after construction?
Dust at the project site would be monitored by Clark County Air Quality Program.
How much does Noble Solar spend on lobbyists each year?
The information, unfortunately, that information is not available to BLM.
Basin 162 is in Nye County and doesn't allow for this water to be used on this project. The water has to come from somewhere. The people in the Pahrump, Nye County need this water to live. This project will affect our wells, and what people do not realize is even if you have town water and no well, they will still be pulling water from the same water source. So how could you allow this project to take place and endanger the town of Pahrump? Will the solar farms buy our property?
The BLM is required to respond to applications that are submitted. The BLM gathered public input from the preliminary application review and is now collecting public input as part of developing the environmental impact statement for the proposed project. Thank you for your comments. The BLM has no information about any purchase of private property associated with the project.
Is the valley fever fungus present in the soil?
The BLM does not have information about the presence or absence of the fungus that causes valley fever in the soils within the Golden Currant project.
Thank you again, everyone, for your patience. We're continuing to organize the questions. Does the applicant have a power purchase agreement in place? And if so, where will the power generated be consumed?
The proponent does not currently have a power purchase agreement for the power that could be generated from the project. The proponent has identified that the power would likely be sold for use in Nevada or California.
How will the paleontological survey be conducted? What specific method?
The BLM is currently evaluating if paleontological resource surveys will be required. If a survey is required, surveys will follow standard survey protocols.
How would vegetation practices be any better on the Golden Currant site? You said it would be disc and roll.
The plan of development currently proposes disc and roll as a construction technique. BLM can develop alternatives to the proposed development technique, which can include an alternative that requires a standard for vegetation density post-construction.
Thank you again, everyone, for your patience as we're continuing to organize questions. Just as a reminder, the scoping period is through June 9th, 2023, so there's ample opportunity to provide additional comments via that method. Exactly when will there be a final water procurement proposal? And will the BLM evaluate them or just accept whatever is proposed? Jessica,
My apologies. Sorry about that. As I had mentioned earlier, the proponent has indicated that water would be purchased from nearby and existing water right owners, and no new water rights would be secured. The applicant would engage best practices for the project and is committed to complying with all regulations, coordinating with Nevada State Engineering, and implementing other measures to ensure groundwater basin integrity. Water supply consideration will be carried forward and analyzed during BLM's environmental analysis for the project. Additionally, the BLM will consider cumulative impacts for the proposed project water use and other connected resources. BLM considers water, both surface and groundwater, within the broader context of all resources on BLM administers lands and their interactions as they relate to BLM responsibilities.
How many tortoise burrows were found on the site?
1,556 total tortoise burrows were located during tortoise surveys.
How was the Golden Currant project area chosen?
The proponent identified and applied for the proposed project site. The BLM completed the application prioritization process and the variance process as described in the solar PEIS for the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project. The variance process involved, the public and agency meetings, as well as agency and tribal coordination. From the information gathered during the variance process, the BLM determined to continue processing the Golden Currant Solar Project and initiate the NEPA process. Input gathered during the variance process will be incorporated into the NEPA process for the project, including issues and alternative identifications. Additional information on the variance determination for the project can be found at the project's website. We are currently in the scoping phase of the NEPA process, where BLM is soliciting input on the proposed Golden Currant Solar Project.
How close would the Golden Currant Solar Project come to the front site shooting range?
The front site shooting range to the project area is approximately 1.86 miles.
Does the project have an off-taker?
The proponent has indicated that a purchaser for the power to be generated from the project site has not been identified yet. The Golden Currant Solar Project proposes to interconnect to the Trout Canyon substation, which would allow the power to be provided to the California Independent System Operator and NV Energy System.
Is it possible that 1,000 acre-feet of water is a very low estimate? The manager of Kiewit at Yellow Pine said they are spraying 300,000 gallons of water per day.
As the proponent refines their site plan in response to resource information, they will likely be refining their water use estimate and needs. The project sponsor has provided the preliminary estimate of 1,000 acre-feet for the construction in the current plan of development.
How would the Golden Currant Solar Project impact the Old Spanish National Historic Trail?
The proposed Golden Currant Solar Project, including the generation tie line, transmission line to the existing Trout Canyon substation, is located within 2 miles of the Old Spanish National Historic Trail and is entirely within the interim 5-mile corridor. Impacts will be assessed in the environmental impact statement.
Clark County is not near to the population of Pahrump, and if they monitor for dust, when it will affect mostly Pahrump.
The BLM is aware that Clark County Department of Air Quality has been actively involved in the Yellow Pine Solar Project. While BLM does not have control over the county's enforcement activities, they are engaged in this nearby project.
You, the BLM, talk about not having many answers and still gathering information. How can you even move this project forward?
Scoping is the very first step in the National Environmental Policy Act process. It is intended to gather information on potential issues, potential impacts, and alternatives. We appreciate all the feedback and we'll be using it as we develop and draft environmental impact statement, which will be provided for public review and comment.
Where will tortoises be relocated to?
If the project moves forward, any tortoises within the project area would be translocated to the Stump Springs Regional Augmentation Site.
Thank you, everyone, again for your wonderful questions. We will be answering a few more questions, but then we'll be moving into the verbal comment period quite soon. But questions will be continued to be answered in the Q&A box. Will the BLM approve construction of the project prior to the applicant having signed a power purchase agreement?
It's not unusual for the project sponsor to not have a contractual relationship for purchase of the power until around the time that the project would secure BLM approval. Generally, the BLM would not approve a notice to proceed with construction of the solar facility until a power purchase agreement has been secured.
Thank you again, everyone, for your questions. At this time, we will be concluding the live question and answer session. We will now transition on to the verbal input section. We will not be answering questions live. However, if you have additional questions, you may continue to drop them into the Q&A box and we will respond in writing. or you can email or mail any remaining questions to the BLM. As a reminder, anyone can see all the questions answered in the chat using the Show All button. We are going to take verbal input following the order in which people pre-registered and said yes or maybe to wanting to provide public comments. Please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and the facilitator will open your microphone. If you are on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9 and then unmute and mute using *6. You will see a 2-minute timer on the next slide, and this will display the amount of time you have for your public comment. We are reserving 2 minutes per public comment input. Your input will be included in the project public record. After going through the list of people who pre-registered to speak, we'll move on to anyone who may want to provide input that did not identify that they wanted to provide comments when they registered. The BLM wants to hear from all the members of the public. However, out of respect for everyone's participation and input, we do ask that you follow these guidelines. Please stay within your allotted time. On the slide, you will see as time is running out. We ask that you watch this and be cognizant of that to wrap up your comment. Please be respectful of others that are speaking. Please refrain from profanity. If these guidelines are not followed, your microphone will be muted and we will have to move on to the next person. Let's go ahead and get started. Up first, we have Jose Witt. Please raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone. Great, let's move on to Marcus Pearson. If you are still interested in commenting, you may raise your hand at this time. Okay, we will move on to Shannon Salter. If you would like to provide a verbal input, please raise your hand using the raise hand function and we will allow you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of comments first in regards to the dust. 40% of the Golden Currant site is badlands, and that just presents an incredible dust hazard, much more than the Yellow Pine Solar Project. And the badlands contain this, very fine silt. And already the dust from Yellow Pine Solar is not being controlled. The Clark County air quality monitoring is not working. I'm out there all the time and I can see massive amounts of dust blowing off the site every time the wind blows. I've even been on Tacoma Road where the road is completely obscured with dust. And from the south end of Pahrump, you can actually see the dust cloud of yellow pine. So Yellow Pine Solar is not controlling their dust. I just don't think we have any reason to believe that Noble Solar at the Golden Currant site would be able to control their dust, especially when it's going to be so much trickier to control it, given that 40% of the site is badlands. And I think it's really interesting that they have that number of 1,000 acre feet, which you identified as about 326 million gallons of water to be used during the first year of construction. And that might not be the actual number, that they could use far more than that, which I think that they probably will based on what the manager at Yellow Pine told me that they're spraying. And the Wolfenstein estate in Pahrump sold the Pahrump water rights for the Yellow Pine Solar Project, and they would most likely be the ones to sell their water rights to Noble Solar. You keep saying that there's a commercial developer or a commercial place that they might get the water, but you haven't identified what that could be. And regardless, it would be in Pahrump. So the water would be coming from this valley.
Thank you. All right, up next, we have John Hyatt. If you would like to provide a verbal input, all right, we will allow you to unmute yourself.
Thank you. With all the projects that are proposed in the Pahrump Valley, we're seeing an unprecedented permanent conversion of native vegetation and land to essentially industrial sites, which will be permanently will not support vegetation or any real kind of life at all. And that is very important, that we need to actually look at that as part of the EIS. Destroying our world in order to save it does not make any sense. And that seems to be in part where the BLM is headed, with no real plan as to how much land will actually be needed for solar energy in the big picture. It seems like the government plan, and CBLM is certainly part of that, is just sort of like, we're going to permit a whole bunch of projects and hope it works out. This is not a way to plan a transition to renewable energy. I'm concerned that there are no really good botanical surveys that have been done. Hopefully they're doing some right now, because we've had some rain, but this has still not been a really good year for rain, because it didn't start raining until January, and a lot of annuals have to have rain in October, November to really thrive. So we need to know just what is out there. And I really fear that the BLM does not have decent botanical records as to what is out there. My time get cut off? What happened?
I'm not sure. I think you had maybe another 30 seconds or so, 40 seconds. Let me go see. Apologies for the technical difficulties.
Okay.
Ah, perfect. There we go. Thanks so much, John.
So we really need to know just what, not only the botanical surveys show, but what about mammalian surveys? How much of that area is used by bats, for instance? I don't think you have any information about that at all. And we're talking about, some 20,000 acres in the Pahrump Valley, which essentially will be converted into solar panels if the projects proposed go ahead. So we really need to see really comprehensive biological data before any decisions are made. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. Just give us one moment, and then I believe we have William Helmer, but just give us a second here. Apologies again. Sorry, just one more moment, and let's see, we'll get that clock reset, and then we'll start right in with William. Righty. Apologies again. Let's just get started. Oh, I'm having the same exact problem. Well, William Helmer, we will, if you would like to participate, please go ahead and raise your hand, and we will use this timer on this side. All right, perfect. We will allow you to talk, and you can unmute yourself when you have a moment.
Okay, yeah, one of my main scoping comments is to have relevant alternatives. And one of the alternatives that should be in the EIS is an offset of the acreage at Golden Currant on public land be offset to offset in terms of the use of rooftop solar on houses, on parking lots, warehouses, that sort of thing, because all that is very feasible, and destroying this very beautiful area of the Pahrump Valley, along with all the other projects that are either being built or in process of planning to be built. It just is unnecessary. It's unnecessary if there is an alternative. And so that's why it's really important to show as an alternative that the rooftop solar areas per acreage, so that you could see that this land does not have to be destroyed or sacrificed if there is a reasonable alternative, especially when that alternative is the area where the energy is going to. So that just seems common sense. And this area here, and another alternative could be an area of critical environmental concern as an alternative, as it's not, the law does not say you must build on public land. It's only if feasible. So that's why the alternative of distributed energy generation has to be in the list of alternatives for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, William. All right. Up next, we have Bill Stremmel. If you would still like to give a verbal comment at this time, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute yourself. Great. We will move on to Joyce Berishman. If you would like to provide a verbal comment. All right. Thank you very much. Let's try this again. Joyce, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, I'll start over.
Okay.
Okay, I don't believe that you live anywhere near these projects. And this project will affect the people that live in the Pahrump Valley. That's ridiculous to take the people's land and use it for these projects. You don't have the water. It all has to come out of Basin 162. That is where I live. And I depend on that water, and all of the other people here do too. Having a well or not having a well, the water all comes from the same place. So there's so many unanswered questions that you have, and you move these projects along and you put them through. You push them through to make solar that goes into a big pot that doesn't benefit anybody here in Nevada. It's not being sold to Nevada. I guess we can buy it, but it's just not a good project. And you say you have tribes saying this is okay. When do we get to say it's okay? Is this the only means we have to say that a project like this moves forward? You're not listening to us. We are the people, and this is the people's land. And we do not want this project. And most people don't even know about this. That's even the sad part. If you tell them about solar farms, they never heard about these projects taking place. So the people don't know, and they're using the public land, and it's not right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Right, up next we have Lorraine Erickson. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we can allow you to unmute yourself. Okay, I do not see Lorraine, so we'll move on to Clay Monroe. If you are interested in speaking, please raise your hand at this time. Do not see Clay. And Judy, I believe that you indicated you do not want to speak. However, I will give just one final opportunity just in case. If you do want to speak, please do raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute yourself. Okay, move on to the last pre-registered person, and that was Heather Gang. If you want to provide a verbal comment, perfect. We will allow you to unmute yourself.
Hi. There are many reasons that this project should be denied. One of the main issues that concerns me is the difficulty, if not impossibility, of site restoration. The northern part of the area contains some ancient soils and desert pavements. These soils are at least 10,000 years old, probably much older. The plan of development says topsoils will be stockpiled and then spread back over disturbed areas at the end of the project lifespan. This won't work. It's not that simple. The type of soil is typically a clay-enriched B horizon overlain by a silty A horizon, in turn overlain by a single layer of tightly packed pebbles. It can't simply be reapplied. Desert pavements cover a very small percentage of the Earth's surface, and they should be preserved. They take millennia to form. The other geologic issue is, of course, the high potential for vertebrate fossils in the Badlands in the southern part of the site. The vegetation is also very old, and one section of the plan of development says the site will be, quote, allowed to revegetate. That's just laughable. It's notoriously difficult to restore desert vegetation. The applicant admits that invasive weeds and dust will be issues, and their answer is to spray chemicals. The applicant doesn't have to prepare a site rehabilitation and restoration plan until after the record of decision. That does not make sense. And lastly, there's the water problems we've already talked about. And the Biden administration has pledged to preserve 30% of wildlands by 2030. How can we afford to destroy any more pristine ecosystems? I mean, I know some people don't see the value of our wild deserts, but they're high biodiversity areas, and they are beautiful, regardless of the numerical ratings that BLM assigns them. There are 1 billion square feet of warehouse rooftops in San Bernardino County alone. That converts to 23,000 acres, 37 square miles if you include Riverside County. Those numbers are from an LA Times article. Put the panels there instead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, that concludes those that have pre-registered to speak. We will now open the floor to anyone who did not pre-register but would like to speak at this time. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand function, and we will allow you to unmute yourself. All right, I see Joyce Berishman.
My husband, Mike Berishman, would like to speak, so I'm going to pass this to him.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of Pahrump. Don't be fooled. These solar farms are going to be a detriment to the town of Pahrump. Now, of course, nobody in Clark County cares about these solar farms that are going right up on the county line. It is very far away. It's the furthest aspect out from anywhere near Vegas or any other city, so they don't care. However, this is just a toehold to go over the border for the other proposed solar farms, being Rough Hat and Copper Rays. And now these come right up to the elementary school. It also surrounds a piece of property owned by a businesswoman who sells hot dogs out in the street. This is going to absolutely destroy our town. It's just a toehold, and then it's just going to crawl right up the soft underbelly of Pahrump until it comes up to Simkus, probably cross the road and all the way down again. They're going to rape and pillage our roads. They're going to rape and pillage our water. They're going to lower the property values. They're going to create more dust and more temperature, higher temperatures, and they're just going to leave us for dead. They're just using us for a dumping ground, to do the solar project for absolutely low grade energy. And the environmental impact is going to be devastating. They talk about the turtles, they're talking about the flora and the fauna, the Indian reservations. What about the inhabitants of Pahrump? We're trying to build a town here. We need companies to come in and build factories that are going to employ 100, 200, 300 people of the town, not a few people managing a solar farm that won't even bring enough revenue to buy sandwiches for lunch to keep the Circle K going. This is a complete farce. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else would like to speak at this time? Please use the raise hand function and we will allow you to unmute yourself. Great, I see Shannon Salter.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I've walked all around the Golden Currant site, and I walked all around the Yellow Pine site before it was destroyed. And the area is incredibly dense with yucca and creosote, and also parts of it are dense with mesquite. You've got a photograph behind you that I would think would be showing the Golden Currant site, and it could be some little section of the site, but the BLM always does this. Whenever they take a photo of a solar site, they choose an angle and they choose a spot that's like the most desolate spot that's not representative at all of the flora and fauna on the site. The Golden Currant site actually contains a Mojave yucca that is over 12 feet tall. I have many photographs of myself in front of the yucca, and it is over twice as tall as I am, and I stand at 5 feet 7 inches. That Mojave yucca is probably taller than anybody has ever seen, and it's probably 1,000 years old. And also the 40% of the Golden Currant site that is Badlands, that whole area is most likely the same geologic formation as the Tule Springs National Monument on the other side of Mount Charleston, which of course was designated a national monument because of the ice age fossils it contains. And the Golden Currant site most likely contains ice age fossils as well. I know for a fact that somebody pulled a mammoth fossil out of the Cathedral Canyon, which runs directly adjacent to the site. And so the entire site should be surveyed according to the Paleontology Act. The BLM should comply with that act during the NEPA process and do those surveys. So I just want to point out how incredibly wild and diverse the Golden Currant Solar Project is. It does not look like the photo that you have displayed behind you.
Thank you, Shannon. Anybody else would like to provide a verbal comment at this time? Please use the raise hand function and we will allow you to unmute yourself. Shannon.
I would just like to observe some silence, actually for the Biden administration, in hopes that they could change course and stop pushing for wind and solar projects on public lands that destroy our wilderness areas, and in hopes that they can be better guided to use areas like the alfalfa fields in California that will be going fallow, millions of acres of alfalfa fields that we no longer have the water to support. And of course, the tens of millions of acres of parking lots that we have in the already built environment. I would like to observe silence in hopes and prayer that our US government could lead the nation in a better way, a new way forward, instead of destroying valuable wilderness.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Would anybody else? Yes, okay. Shannon's back.
I should have been more clear. I wanted to use the entirety of the rest of my 2 minutes to observe that silence in hopes that the US government will create a new path forward instead of destroying wilderness. I'd like to take the next 2 minutes in silence in hopes that they do that. I'd like to take the next we know, minute and a half or so, however much time is left of this public comment, to really hope and pray that we get a new way through our brains. Obviously, the complete annihilation of natural resources, the complete annihilation of nature is the old way. That's what we've done up until now, but we don't need to keep doing it. We have so many other options, especially the alfalfa fields, the millions of acres of alfalfa fields that we don't have water to support, the millions of acres of rooftops and parking lots that can have canopies built over them. So I'd like to take the rest of this time to hope and pray for a new path forward for our nation, this great country of America.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Anybody else would like to comment verbally at this time? We would appreciate it if you'd use the raise hand function.
Yeah, I just wanted to address people from Pahrump that are on this call. We know for sure that the Wolfenstein estate in Pahrump sold the Pahrump water rights to the Yellow Pine Solar Project, and it would most likely be them that would sell the water rights to the Golden Currant Solar Project, as well as the Mosi Solar Project, as well as another solar project called Cathedral Canyon Solar, and potentially Wolfenstein would potentially even sell Pahrump water rights to a massive solar project proposed on the California side in Charleston View, that is even larger than any of these projects. So I think a couple of things that need to happen are that we need to get in touch with the people that administer the Wolfenstein estate, and do what we can to influence them to not sell any more water rights. And I also think we need to address the Nye County Commission and ask them to do something about Basin 162 getting depleted for solar projects that are being built on the Clark County side. And then, for electricity that is going to be sold to California, and, maybe sold to Las Vegas, but certainly not to Pahrump. And probably not sold to Nevada because California pays so much more for it. So the developer, Noble Solar, has no motivation to sell electricity to Nevada when California is going to pay significantly more for it. That's why the electricity from Yellow Pine is being sold so far to Silicon Valley and Monterey Bay in California. It's not been sold to Nevada Energy because they don't pay as much. So we do need to protect the basin. We do need to protect Basin 162. We do need to protect the water in Pahrump because it's over allocated. It's been depleted. For a while, there was a moratorium on drilling new residential wells. So we need to make it so that Wolfenstein cannot sell any more water.
Thank you, Shannon. Would any other participants like to provide a verbal comment at this time? If you would, please raise your hand. I see Heather Gang.
I would just like to add that this area has intangible qualities that you can't put a number on, like you try to with your view scenic quality ratings. I think it's an area that's very spiritual to a lot of people. It includes the Native American Salt Song Trail and Cathedral Canyon, and there's a Catholic, I don't know what it's called, like a diocese out there too. So it's just an area that's beautiful and spiritual to a lot of people. And a lot of us really do love the desert and believe that it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Would any other participants like to provide a verbal comment at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Great. We are not seeing any additional hands at the moment. As such, we thank you all, and those are all the people who have asked to speak at this time. As one more reminder, the public scoping comment period is open until June 9th, 2023, and you can comment via email, sending in a hard copy comment, or using the Participate Now button on the BLM website. Katrina will now do a brief closeout.
So thank you, everyone who joined the meeting today. We really do appreciate your time and consideration for this project. We've listened to all the comments tonight, and of course, they will all go in the record and be used as consideration during the NEPA analysis. We will continue to keep the how to submit further comments slide up for reference until 8 p.m. tonight. And again, I just wanted to thank everyone who attended, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you again for attending this evening. Just to let you know, we will be here until 8 p.m. So if you have any comments, we will be ready to take them. Or if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A chat feature. those of you still on, the BLM will be here till 8 p.m. So we will accept any verbal comments or any questions in the Q&A function. Thank you. As a reminder, we will be here until 8 p.m. to address any verbal comments, or if you have a question, put it in the Q&A function. Thank you. Thank you again for attending this evening. We'll be here for another 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A chat function. Or if you have a verbal comment, we would gladly accept it. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the scoping meeting for the Golden Currant Solar Project.